2nd competitive project application process, which will be starting in September. And with that, we are revisiting the project application criteria and scoring that we used for our first project application cycle in 2020. It was a working subgroup of the TAC that had developed the criteria and scoring in 2020, and the full TAC and the policy board had approved it later that year. So what we're hoping for today is policy board review and approval of continuing the 2020 application criteria and scoring, either with or without a TAC suggested addition of an equity related criterion, or really any other revision that the board would like to make. So as a reminder, these are the amounts that the board had approved last month to fund this application cycle. The funds are awarded by year, but may be awarded across multiple years. So we have a total of 2.4 million available for this process across all years. And then at the bottom here, that's our anticipated schedule. So this month, both our TAC and policy board reviewing the application criteria and scoring to see if we want to keep it as is, make any changes. September 1st, the application submittal will open. October 21st it will close. And then at the November TAC meeting, that's when applicants can present their projects to the TAC. And at the December TAC meeting, the TAC will then review the applications, evaluate projects, and make a funding recommendation to the policy board. And we expect at the December policy board meeting, applicants will be able to present their projects and the board potentially to award funding at that time.
Do you have any questions, Barb, about that schedule?
No, I think this looks good.
Great.
Anyone else with any questions? I would make the one comment that this process came about, it was about 3 years ago, wasn't it?
It was in 2020.
In 2020.
Yeah.
And the only comment I want to make is that before that, it was entirely informal, deciding what the amounts would be and how it would decide. And people came to NPO whenever they came to NPO with requests. And that was just, and that was perfectly legal, is the point I want to make sure, especially for you, Megan, and you, Phil, is to make sure you know that we really do have complete control over this. And if there were anything at all you were not comfortable about with this proposal, we do have it within our power to change anything about this. So for me, this looks good. This is a good process. It is easy and straightforward for applicants to follow, so they know how and when to apply. So it's more fair for everyone, more equitable for everyone. We have a better idea of our overall budget this way. And most of all, it's been time saving. This way, we just have these regularly scheduled meetings to discuss instead of every single meeting we're discussing some small portion of STBG. So that's the one thing I just want to make sure that everybody understands about this process and what we're doing. And having said all of that, I've been involved in developing this from the beginning, and I think this looks good. And as far as I'm concerned, we can carry on.
Thanks, Barb. I think giving the background info is really helpful. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, so this table includes the criteria and scoring that was developed and approved in 2020, and also includes number 6. So you see the highlighted note there. So that is a new equity related criterion that was suggested by the TAC at their last meeting. The original Criterion Scoring from 2020, basically everything except number 6, was developed based on the goals that were approved by the joint Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Transportation System Plan Steering Committee in 2019. So that's where they originate from. So the criteria topics listed in dark green are a higher priority. So with a possible 6 points available for each one, based on how well the project supports each criterion from the information that the applicant provides. And then the 3 at the bottom in light green are a lower priority with a maximum of 3 points available each. So just to kind of go over these, the criteria cover, so the first one covers safety. The second one is accommodating multiple types of users. Third is system efficiency. Next, benefits to those that don't drive. And then we have vehicle miles traveled and emissions reduction. And next is the proposed new one, which is benefits to transportation disadvantaged populations. And then in the lower priority ones are cost sharing and inclusion of other funding sources, and then economic development, and finally freight movement. So something that's really important that I want to mention is that the criteria list and the resultant score that each project will get is only meant to be used by the TAC as a tool when they develop their funding recommendation to the board, and for the board to reference when deciding which projects to fund. There are other important factors that need to be taken into consideration when developing a funding recommendation and making funding decisions. So for example, things like project readiness, or likelihood of being funded by another source, or really other important information that isn't necessarily included in this table. So again, it's just a tool, and the scores aren't meant to be the only factor in recommending or deciding which projects get funded. So I just want to keep that in mind. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion, and maybe the first thing is, is there support or objection to including the TAC suggested addition in to the table number 6, which is project provides benefit to transportation disadvantaged populations?
Great, thank you, Andrea. Megan, I see you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of wondering at number 6. I was thinking about the wording, I guess, but I we're trying to get away from sort of saying disadvantaged, but if it's transportation disadvantaged, I'm not sure. We're trying to kind of go more towards like underserved when we're talking about those populations. But just wanted to kind of bring that up as an issue, but also just show my complete support for number 6 being included as a criteria.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if we want to change the language, so I specifically used transportation disadvantaged populations because we have a new equity mapping tool. Showed it to the board a couple months ago when it was being developed. And we have a number of data sets that are mapped, right? So we have that the TAC can use when putting information in the application to support this criterion. So for example, we have areas where we either have high poverty levels or high percentages of low income populations living, non-white Hispanic population, population with limited English proficiency, zero car households. But then there is an indexed version that ODOT has developed, which is essentially a culmination of a number of populations, with basically made up of all the individual ones that we have. And they call that transportation disadvantaged population index. So that's why I use that language, but we can certainly revise that if the board would like to.
What do you think, Megan?
I mean, I'd love to hear from you and from Phil, and I'd love to hear from everybody what you think.
I think you bring up an excellent point, that yes, we always want to be mindful of language about human beings, that we don't want to describe humans as disadvantaged, but transportation disadvantage is a specific thing. And I do think the consistency to be able to follow along from the equity mapping along to this process means, for me, the consistency of that language is important. So I would say this is just another of those things. We can modify this at any time. I would say we would want to do both. If we had the ability on that equity mapping, we would want them to be the same. If we were going to change one, I would want to change the other as well. Does that make sense, Megan?
Absolutely does. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Phil, have you got any comments with your little tiny bit of voice?
I actually really liked the language you were just using around equity. I mean, so I wonder if something that said, projects that advance transportation or equity in transportation might be another way to phrase this.
I like that idea, Phil, because that's certainly what we're after, right? That's what we're trying to get to, is equity in transportation.
I like that.
Also, I would just say I also very much support inclusion of this criteria and at a higher priority.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Oda or Rick, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I'm on the TAC, and we added this criteria in. And again, I know that Andrea picked this because transportation disadvantaged populations matches up with the mapping tool that ODOT currently has. But I don't believe we're wedded to the language associated with that. That's just what we labeled it. It's a tool that helps us add this into the decision-making process. So I personally don't care what we call it. It's just as long as we use that criteria in helping inform our decisions.
Okay, well, hearing that the majority are on board with projects that advance equity in transportation, I'll go ahead and revise that language.
And then we would do that instead of benefit to transportation disadvantaged.
Yeah, just we can just simply replace that language that's on the screen now with projects that advance equity in transportation, or project advances equity in transportation.
The matching up between the equity mapping is where I'm stuck. That equity mapping is in our city council goals, and the ability to go from the one thing to follow it along to the other thing, I do think is important. I'm wondering if we could, split the baby and have them both in there. That project increases equity and provides benefit to transportation, you know what I mean? With the idea that maybe we just want to change that designation in both places, change it in the equity mapping, and then change it here as well.
we could include both and do it like a slash between them. So project advances
that?
equity and transportation slash provides benefit to transportation disadvantaged populations.
Megan?
Sorry. Yeah, that would work for me.
Okay. And then the last thing I'll say, I keep going back and forth between 4 and 6. So 4 improves transportation system or provides transportation related benefit to those that do not drive specifically. And then 6 is more broad than that with benefit to transportation disadvantage. So yeah, I think adding the word equity in there, but keep that specific transportation disadvantage because of that link over. And then we can just kind of think to ourselves, we're trying to come up with a different designation there. Megan, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I'm overcomplicating here. I think Andrea knows what we want.
So what I'm hearing is that you want both in there.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
think right now. Please.
We can do that. We can make that
It's a
happen.
really excellent comment, Megan. Absolutely. You know, language is everything. So thank you, everyone. So Andrea, it's back to you.
Yeah. So, well, one more. Can you
And
go
I'm so
back to
sorry.
the
And
table,
thank
Tyler?
you.
Oh,
I'm so sorry, Andrea. And thank you to the TAC. Greg is here with us today. You know, that was an excellent suggestion, and we appreciate that they noticed that as well. So thank you. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right. So is there anything in the table that, aside from number 6, because we've got that one sorted out, so that, the board feels should be deleted or revised, or anything else that might be missing that should be added? Any thoughts on that? Okay, well, hearing none, then I'll go ahead and I'll make that change to number 6, and then sounds like we're good to go with the rest of them. Okay, Tyler, you can go ahead. And so here, this slide gives a little more information on that TAC suggested equity related criterion that we just talked about. So again, we have a fairly new equity mapping tool that the TAC wants to incorporate into this application process. So an applicant would include information that demonstrates how their project supports the new criterion, both using the mapping tool, which here's the data sets that we have mapped, as well as any other information to support the criterion. So just simply wanted to go over that and show you what's mapped in there.
Andrea, if I could, the one thing that isn't in here that we might want to think about just for a minute is safe routes to schools. Do we want to have a criterion, something about connecting students safely? Just a thought.
Yeah, well, up to if the board wants to do that, go back to the existing table, Tyler. We kind of have that covered in number 4, I think. I would say, provides
Okay.
benefit to those that don't drive.
Okay, good. Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrea. Okay.
Sure.
actually, Andrea.
Yeah.
Andrea, I'm so sorry.
No.
Oh,
fine.
that's okay.
No, I wasn't correcting you. I have a quick question for Andrea.
Sure.
Yeah, looking at this, have we mapped our youth population? Do we have that access?
We can certainly add that. It is in the index. So the bottom bullet point there, the ODOT population index, youth is included in that. But we can, I think that is probably the only one that's missing, that's included in the ODOT index that we don't have separated out. But yeah, we can go ahead and put that in there. That's not a problem.
Because I think, I mean, you said
Yeah.
safe routes, I'm thinking like the 5 to 15
Yeah.
age range especially.
Exactly.
That would fit.
No, I think that's a great way to do that. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah.
That would be great.
I'll have that done. Okay.
Okay.
Next slide, Tyler. If there are any other questions or comments, we revised the table, so it will be as revised, or any motion.
All right. I don't see any hands raised for further. In mind, I would happily look for a motion.
Cameron has her hand.
Cameron. We're not. Okay,
Put it down.
okay. So I'm looking for a motion.
I move to approve the project application criteria and scoring for the 2022 call for projects as revised.
I'll second.
Thank you. We've got a motion from Councillor Perkins and a second from Mr. Williams. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye. Hands are up. That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. That gets us to item number 6, and Hovey will take us through this one.
Thanks, Barb. So we have a promissory note, agenda item number 6, and it is, we go to the next slide, is basically an overnight loan that the city provides to us so that when we close out on June 30th of each fiscal year, we don't have a negative balance starting the new year. We are under a reimbursement basis, so the promissory note covers us for that month or 45 days or so that we don't have the invoice received for the work done in June. So this is something that happens every year through our budget. And this year, we did not add an overnight loan to our fiscal year budget for FY 22-23, the one that we just had adopted that starts July 1, because we had assumed that the COVID funding was going to cover that because we had cash in there in that budget. But based on budget law, that was not available in the right category. So this is just kind of fixing that. So the promissory note was signed and processed through the city council last month, and we are catching up and getting that approved. So Barb's signature is approved. So on the next page, next slide, Tyler, is just the background that's in the agenda. The loan amount is not to exceed $150,000, and it is for reimbursements of our grant. So are there any questions on this process?
Cameron, go ahead. Cameron, did you mean to put your hand up?
I did, thank you.
Of course.
The way the motion reads suggests that the MPO chair is authorizing the city of Bend
Oh,
to do something.
well, we're authorizing, if you go back to the promissory note, we're authorizing the loan. So it's a loan amount, the city advanced by the city of Bend to the MPO.
Do we need to specify the amount that your promissory note is for?
There's only one promissory note for our fiscal year, but yes, we could to sign the promissory note not to exceed $150,000. It typically will not be that much money, but they wanted to make sure they had funding just in case.
Okay, so my question had to be, maybe it's, I move to authorize the Bend MPO chair to sign the promissory note from the Bend MPO to the city of Bend, not from the city of Bend to the MPO.
The promissory note is from the city of Bend. It's created by the city of Bend.
Okay.
Does that
It struck me the other way around, and I just wanted to make sure
right, Tyler?
I made that concern known to you.
be switched?
I think it needs to be switched.
Okay, so when someone does the
We owe them
motion,
money.
Yes.
Yeah. So it should
please
be
switch the last two entities
from us
from
to
the
them,
MPO
Yeah.
to the
I
city.
think.
My apologies.
Thank you, Cameron.
It was last night.
All right, thank you.
That Cameron's earning her paycheck today. We appreciate you, Cameron. Good work. Excellent. All right, if there are no further comments or questions, I would look for that amended motion.
I move to authorize the Bend MPO chair to sign the promissory note from the Bend MPO to the city of Bend in the amount of $150,000.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Mr. Williams and a second from Councilor Perkins. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand, say hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Everyone's
Megan.
Thank you.
There's Megan. Great, that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Hovey. That gets us to an update on the Bikeshare program. Toby, I think you might have the most interesting item of the day. Take it away.
Thanks.
Oh, he's frozen.
Uh-oh, you're frozen for a minute there. But you're frozen with a smile on your face, Toby. So
Give them a minute.
isn't that how it always works?
Yeah. Let's just
The
right
mo,
here.
you know, the minute it's his turn.
We could swap.
Yeah, do you want us to jump in and just go to item
Sure.
8?
Toby, we're gonna move ahead to item 8 and come back to you. So Hovey, if you want to go ahead with safety performance measures update.
Yes. All right. Making sure. All right. Okay, so this is an informational item about the MPO's transportation crash data and our crash rates through what the federal performance measures are that are required to have as an MPO. And then also we're going to talk about a regional safety committee and how that work is getting started again. It was a while ago that we had discussed that, and I wanted to get that back into our radar. So again, informational item. This report is posted online, and I think there's couple copies of it right here, so that in-person people can see it. But the national roadway safety goal was to achieve a significant reduction in traffic fatalities and serious injuries on all public roads. And with the objective that the MPO and the states invest federal resources to make progress towards those goals. So there is no funding issues required or right around these performance measures and meeting them, but making progress towards the goal is what we are continuing to try and do. And I think that's what everyone wants to do as far as
I think we're trying that whether the federal government
Yep.
tells us to or not.
So we're following the guidelines, but we're also following our heart.
Of course we are.
So yeah. Next slide just shows what the safety performance measures are. So we've got number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities based on the vehicle miles traveled for our urban area. And then again for serious injuries, and then the serious injury rate. Non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries by number. There isn't a rate for that at this time, but we were asked by our TAC members to consider looking at just putting a rate there anyways with the same vehicle miles traveled, just to show what a rate would be. So that's something I haven't developed yet, but that could be another measure just to help us track these items. So on the next slide, you'll see our resolution adopting these. So in 2018, the Bend MPO Policy Board adopted these performance measures. In 2021, ODOT updated the performance measures. And then in 2022, I'm now updating our region's safety performance measures report. So that's this kind of background of what we've done and where we're at. next slide is our rates. But, it shows what the ODOT initial rates that we adopted is that first line from 2018. And then the other two, 2021 and 2022, are the ODOT safety action plan updated fatality rates that have been adopted through statewide planning efforts. So what I'm using for this is the bottom one, what 2022 first year targets, and that is for crash during years 2015 through 2019. So those are the targets that I compared. So on the next slide, you'll see how we're doing. This is statewide data on the top that shows what the fatality rates are and the serious injury rates, and then what the Bend MPO fatality rates and serious injury rates are. And you'll see the red X's mean that we are not meeting those targets based on that previous chart. So it's just a quick way to show where we're at and what we're looking at. The bottom two lines are just two different data sets, one with 2015 through 2019 data to align with that safety action plan. And then the most recent MPO data that we have is the 2016 through 2020. So in the following slides, I kind of break down what these look like, and we're looking at that 2016 through 2020 data.
So the red X's are targets that we did not meet.
Correct.
And then the green checks, we
Means that
did meet
yeah.
the target there. So
Mhm.
the serious injury rate has been decreasing. But
It has
the-
been met. I don't know.
Has
if-
been
yeah.
met, whether
Mhm.
that, yeah, right,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say decreasing.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that any of our crashes have decreased, especially if we talk about the next 2 years, because this is through 2021 or 2020, and 21 and this year have been extremely hard for us. So let's
Okay.
talk about fatalities next. So, and I'm sorry, that's not my best subject, but it is important and I want us all to know about it. So this is what the fatality rate looks like through 2020. And then the red line, the yellow line and the blue line there are different ways that we could get to zero. So this is something that ODOT developed using zero by 2035, just a straight line from what we're looking at right now as a rate. A rolling average of 3% reduction each year is the yellow line that's straight. And then that red line is kind of an S curve that shows maybe we can't make really big impacts in the next couple years. So they did like a flat couple years and then they tried to do a bigger reduction. That if we dig into ODOT's Transportation Safety Action Plan, some of that is due to a different kind of vehicle fleet in our area, you know, more electrical vehicles, less heavy vehicles, and more automated vehicles, that sort of thing to help with crashes. So those are just some of the options that they had in their safety action plan. So that's how it shows flat now until technology can help with some of these crashes.
And that's the red line.
That's the red line. So that's just kind of an explanation. In the following charts, you'll see these same trend lines and they align with the same theory of trying to get to zero fatalities, zero serious injuries by 2035.
And I completely understand we're trying to get to zero, but the target number was 1 point something.
For fatalities, I have to look back, but yes, it's these are statewide numbers for targets, and then you see the 1.48.
So right below 1.5
Yeah.
is
so
the target.
yeah. So
Okay.
if you look at going back to the fatalities thing, Tyler.
This one or the?
Next one.
There we
Yeah.
go. Okay,
So in
thank
this
you.
one, you can see the 1.5 is was met in 2016, you know, or our rate just for that 1 year
Mhm.
was met, not since 2013 has it stayed under 1.5. So these are just
I got a question.
sure.
This is Greg Bryant, and I'm just wondering, have they had enough information from the electrical cars or the automated cars to see if what that estimated to do, if that's starting to go that way or not?
You know, they're not sure. I mean, it's all speculation. I can pull up some more information and see how much they did. I know they did a lot of research on it, but
Yeah, I don't think they have enough data like in hand.
yeah,
To
to say that
make an actual informed statement at this point.
okay, so we'll go really quickly to this next one. So this is fatality.
Thank you. Okay.
From 2016 to 2020, and this just shows a map of where they are. Some of these may
And
be
actual numbers.
and
Yeah.
actual numbers based on what we're looking at. So this is a little more digestible as far as being able to understand what's going on. The 21 and the 22 numbers on the chart are not on the map. They were not mapped. So it's just these 2016 through 2020 numbers you see on the map. And there may be dots over each other, or there was one like Aubrey View where it was 2 people were killed on that crash. So some of these dots indicate more fatalities. But what you'll see is not very many bike fatalities, 3 to date. Motorcycles, 7. Vehicles, 15 fatalities, and pedestrians, 8 fatalities within the Bend MPO region. So this is
Between 2016 and 2022.
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the latest I have based on numbers from June 30th of this year.
I was going to say that our PED, our number of people walking that have been killed, very much, there's been a big increase statewide and nationally, and our numbers mirror kind of what's happened over the last 5+ years, with that becoming a big focus area of safety, because it's a very disproportionate share of people that are being impacted, in by these crashes.
Yeah. Sure. So next is the serious injury rate, and I'm not going to go over these ones too much in detail, but again, just trying to get to that target rate. And then go to the next one and we'll show the map of the serious injuries. And then the chart on the right is just the number of serious injuries instead of the rate. So serious injuries are spread out widely within the area, and then we'll be looking, we did look at a safety action plan with areas, whether it's a crash factor because of the way an intersection is, or if it's just a trend of these are emphasis areas because it's all speeding. So there's 2 different ways to look at your crash data. We've analyzed the first set of data, and we haven't analyzed this 2016 through 2020 to show the trends this time, but that is our next step.
Those serious injury crashes really are spread all the way around town.
They are.
Yeah.
The fatalities seem to be right along the thorough, where speeds are
Busy.
above 35, but that
Yeah.
serious injury, they're just everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll see they're almost all on major roadways.
They're still,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
I mean, and you see
Part.
you see a disproportionate number of them on our multi-lane, our 4 and 5 lane roadways, which is, I mean, that's what you expect based on history. So, but there are some other random ones on here too
Right.
that are.
But it definitely just strikes me as, wow,
Yeah.
those really are happening in many more places.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Is there any data that you can correlate here to like size of vehicle?
We can get commercial vehicle and private vehicle, but
Right.
not like, is this an SUV or is this a light pickup that size? No, we can't
I
get
would
to
just
that.
be curious to see the correlation, because
Yeah.
a lot of the
I think-
national trend is because of vehicle
Bigger
size.
vehicles.
Vehicle size,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm. And that's something that
then-
they kind of thought about with that effort too, of maybe reducing weight of personal vehicles with electrification and just a fleet update.
Then, if the payoff on that, then the people driving those vehicles are in more danger if they are with a commercial truck,
Right.
right? So, yeah, okay.
Yep. Okay, so let's go to bike and pedestrian crash. Non-motorist data is how it is stated in our performance measures, bike and pedestrian. And the numbers are sporadic throughout the year, throughout the years, but the trend is not going in the right direction, going through 2021 and 2022 as well. We go to the next slide, you can see the map. And this is all of our bike and pedestrian crashes, not just the fatal and serious injury. We'll see the red dots, the red squares are the fatalities within the MPO region. The others are all bike and pedestrian crashes. And the reason I put all of our crashes in here is because it's a minor change between having a serious injury and having a non-serious injury crash when you're involved with motor vehicles. So we just want to see all the locations, not just serious injury crashes. So, you have a question?
Okay, so we're talking about the person who is injured or had a fatality, cyclist, pedestrian, etc. But I mean, is the result of their injury or is the mechanism for their injury or fatality always a collision with a car? Or are there
In this data
bicyclists crashing into other things?
In this data set, it is that it's involved with motor.
Yeah, these are all motor vehicle
vehicle
involved crashes.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's the ODOT crash data, it has to be, it's not just somebody who fell or had a single vehicle, single bike crash or that sort of thing.
Okay, because kind of the labeling of the kind of the person injured or deceased, you know, kind of based on their mode of travel when they had the crash, it could sort of lead you to think like, oh, well, bicycling is dangerous. I mean, well, I mean, and bicycling can be dangerous, but you know, the reason that bicycling is dangerous is because there are cars out there. So I wouldn't want the way that this data is packaged to.
I can add just with this information that these are bike motor vehicle, pedestrian motor vehicle crashes. Just to make sure that's clear. That's helpful. Thank you.
That's a really important point, Phil. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Thanks, Megan. So we're gonna go forward and we give some more time for Toby to do his, but what I wanted to show is we also have to, access to all the crash data in the region. So our safety work is truly regional, and that's what our next step is to look at all the crashes within this Central Oregon area, Jefferson, Crook, and Deschutes counties. And we're looking to go to the Central Oregon Area Commission on Transportation with a subcommittee on safety with all the elected officials within the 3 counties that will be able to participate in more of a safety campaign, get some targets and goals going towards these, because we can't work just in the MPO silo. These crashes happen outside our borders as well. And the more conversations we have, the more impact we can hopefully meet those goals of 2035, not seeing any fatalities for serious injury crashes. So that is this part of the next effort. So this map is also available and will be available in an online mapping form soon. The city GIS folks have it, they just haven't been able to post it yet. So we'll be able to dig in, you'll be able to zoom in and click on these and see what the crashes are about too. So this map shows serious injury and fatalities within our region in that same period. The 2022 up there at the top is wrong, it's 2020. I'll fix that. Okay, so the next slide is just talking about that regional safety committee, getting a safety communications plan, seeking grant opportunities through other jurisdictions and federal and ODOT safety division, has provided us a grant through the MPO to work with Deschutes County and to help create that regional transportation safety committee. So we'll continue to work with that and extend that grant and add additional funding starting in October of 2022. So these things are moving forward. And then really our goal is to find local funding to continue at the safety committee, so it's not grant related, so it can continue and become a very successful process. So I just put a little bit of data on here just showing the Deschutes County crashes and then the vehicle miles traveled. So you see 2020 with COVID closures and that sort of thing going down. So the crash rates were really high. So vehicle travel went down, but the fatalities went up in 2020 based on all of those numbers in 2021. They went down to 20 fatalities in Deschutes County, but just wanted to share just a little more data on that. And we have a project website, centraloregonsafetravel.org, to keep all these updated. So our report, the performance measure report is on there, and the mapping tools will be on there as well, coming soon. So I think that's my last slide. Any
Great.
questions or comments or suggestions would be welcome. And after you review the report a little more, if you have any questions, please reach out to myself or Tyler, and we'll be able to provide more information. And this will be something that'll come back to the policy board as we dig into the crash data some more for some trends and analysis of what we find.
Great. Thank you, Hovey. Thanks
you.
so much. This is really important information.
But I think one thing I'll mention is just, it's related to this, is the new federal transportation bill includes a lot of new money for safety. And so we're hoping to see more funding coming in locally for actual capital type project, but then also there are a lot of new grant programs available through the federal transportation bill. And one of those grant programs, Andrea has been working with Sarah Hudson from the City of Bend, the manager's office, on trying to figure out if we can seek and go after a federal grant
Great.
for some other safety work within the Bend area. And so we can bring an update to you on that as well in the next month or two when we know more.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I
so-
saw Toby's on there.
Yeah.
It's not frozen anymore. Hi, Toby.
Yeah, not sure what happened. I was just still talking, and then I'm like, why is nobody, like, I don't hear anything. Sorry about that. Let's try this again.
Yeah. Thank you, Toby. Sorry about that.
No, you should be able to see this in it right now.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a high-level overview, and then if you have questions, we can dive into those. So basically, since the launch on June 3rd, 2022, we now are up and running 7-ish weeks with the new Bikeshare program. We have installed about 20 preferred parking locations. Those are the neighborhood mobility points that we're funding through the MPO grant. And we just wrapped up a mapping tool to identify all the end trip data from BIRD. And through that, we have about 80 new bike parking locations that we will start getting to work on over the next couple of weeks. Those are pretty much split in half, almost split in half, 40-40 between private locations, meaning like businesses that we can see like clusters of end trips, right? Right around certain businesses, and BIRD will start reaching out to them, asking them if they can become like a preferred parking location. And the others are like the same for like with either way the City of Bend right of way, or public entities like the county, the park, COCC, that we are now start reaching out to hopefully do agreements that we can add bike parking there. Once we are doing that, we will probably get much more compliance, and hopefully that will reduce bikes left where they shouldn't be. We're doing a couple things right now to encourage that. So we increase the incentive for returning a bike into the proper location to $1. Used to be 35 cents, which really didn't go far. Now it's $1, and we'll let that go until the end of September to see how that positively impacts that or not. And we will start issuing warnings to bikes that are not left properly. As we are adding more preferred parking, that is official preferred parking, we're also going to fines that if somebody leaves their bike outside a certain area, they will be fined, so that we can really enforce it more. It's a bit of a work in progress, I guess, a process, but we're getting there. And I think I think that's always important, gauging by the complaints that we're getting, it's getting better, because in the first 3 weeks, I got probably 1, 2, 3 emails every day. Now I barely get any anymore. And most of the feedback is also very positive, which is really good. That said, I wanted to give you an actual data picture of what has happened. And that's actually really surprising in a way, but in a good way. So in the time between June 3rd and July 14th, we had a total of 9,051 rides on bird bikes. Those rides were done by about 3,367 unique riders. The average duration was 16.8 minutes. And if we will put that into like a climate context, it's an estimated 1.35 metric tons of CO2 that were avoided. And that's estimating that 1/3 of all rides would have been car rides, but they now were done on a bike. So that translates in about 3,017 car trips that were avoided. And this is managed by, and I thought it's important for you to know, there's 2 dedicated fleet managers on the ground working every day to make sure the bikes are up and running the right way, collected, rebalanced, and all those kind of things. Now, to dive into this a little bit deeper, the highlights of this, and that's really, I think, really important for us to know. Out of all those rides, we could identify 210 daily commuters. So a daily commuter is a designated trip from one point to another point that happens every day at the same time. So, and that's really interesting, because that clearly sees that there's a shift in behavior from a few people, that instead of maybe using the car or other, so we really don't know, because we haven't surveyed, we don't know what else they would have used. But a good chance is that they, because of gas prices or other things, that jumped on the bike instead of taking the car. We have now 17 community access accounts. Those are accounts that are accessible to people that live in the community that might not be able to afford the regular fee of the bird bikes. Our strongest day so far was 4.4 rides per bike deployed on that day. I'm taking a little pause, because that's a huge number. That's really, really huge. On that day, we had 178 bikes deployed. So you can do the math. There were a lot of rides. We are currently averaging, we're going between 0.9 to 2.5 on a regular day on weekdays. On the weekends, we go more into the high, like 2.8, 2.9, which is great. And we average about 168 bikes in rotation. So there's about 200 bikes in Bend available to bird, but they're not all deployed at the same time, because if one is broken, it's taken down, replaced, so there's no broken bike on the streets. The next slide is a little bit weird to see.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I stop you there? So those fleet managers, those are employees of the bird bike company.
Yep.
Yep. And everything you're talking about is being paid, is what that company is doing, and it's paid for by the fees for the bikes. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's a great reminder. So
we made the initial investment to get the things out on the street. Do we own those bicycles?
no.
Yep.
So I can dive in that a little bit more. So
Okay.
the investment that we made, the only investment that the city of Bend made, is in creating new biking infrastructure. And that is really, it's actually a really good message to talk about, right? Because we're creating, through the Bikeshare program, new biking infrastructure that, whether the Bikeshare program continues in 2 years after the pilot or not, that will be there to stay, and is accessible to everybody who likes to bike within the city. And we are not spending any money on the operation of the Bikeshare program, except, as a little disclaimer, my time that I'm spending coordinating with a vendor, talking to people about that. I've been corrected that that is money spent. So yes, we're spending that money. But besides that, Bird is actually paying the city of Bend to operate in the right of way. So there was an application fee that Bird had to pay. There's a pilot program fee that Bird had to pay. And there's a deposit account that Bird had to maintain, that in the event that those two employees can't manage what they have to do, and the city of Bend has to send somebody out to retrieve a bike or do some work, we would bill against that. So it's really important to know, right? It's not that we actually said, we don't want to create a program that needs to be subsidized. We want to create a program that serves a purpose and can be feasible, and through that enables us to actually also help other members of our community to have access to it that need it. And I think currently we're getting there. So that's a good thing, right?
Great. Thank you. I see David Amerton has his hand up.
Yeah, Toby, I was going to ask, on those really high per bike days, are you seeing those, are they associated with like particular events, like like a downtown festival or a concert, or, you know, maybe you can look and see that a lot of those trips are people that are floating the river and then riding back?
Yeah, we have seen very funny things in Bend with people holding their floaties and their little swan on a bike riding, right? But in this case, so the strongest day was 4th of July. So that was the strongest day so far. We clearly see an increase. We have not seen an increase related to events, but we do see an increase on the weekends. And then during the week, it dips down. And then every day of the week, it strongly builds back up towards the weekend.
Thanks. I think that, you know, that message about like 4th of July, and I bet you'll see other kind of situations like that, is a really kind of compelling part of the story, because it's, you know, it's precisely those places where you don't want people to drive, and precisely those times of day or days of the year when you don't want people to drive.
Yeah.
That's when this is replacing the most car trips. And that's awesome.
Yeah, no, good point. Thanks.
Phil, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
So that was a really helpful rundown on how this is not really costing the city or the community, or, you know, other public agencies anything to run. But do we have a sense of how this is working out financially for the Bird Bike Company? I mean, is it profitable, or at least positive enough for them that they are excited to continue doing this and expand, or is it suffering, or kind of where is that at?
Yeah, that's a great question. So while I can't comment or don't want to comment on like the financial performance for Bird or what their indicators are, right? I don't know what their KPIs are or anything like that. But what I do know from frequent conversations with TJ Burkle, who is our Bird partner, and he also lives in Bend, so we do talk frequent, is that any measure of one north of one ride per bike per day is successful for them. So which means if we would be to give you a comparison, and I don't have that on a slide, I gladly can send it so you know I'm not just making that up. Our Zexta data was about 0.25, 0.35 rides per bike per day.
Wow.
And so this is a huge increase, which it has to do with a lot of different things, right? Frequent, like how many bikes are deployed. It's definitely getting more because we have more bikes and they're more accessible all across the city, so they're easier to jump on than something else, right? So that's an indicator. As far as my conversations with Bird, they're happy with what's going on. I did like internally for myself, I took their numbers from the first month and I multiplied it by what I know the fees they're charging, and I'm like, that seems okay, right? Now I don't know their overhead, so I can't judge that. Now, I believe, and David can jump in and stop me, David Evans can jump in and stop me, I don't want to talk out of line. I believe Bird is really in for the long game, right? The bike program is new for them. That's a new product that they have. They've really focused on scooters before. They hope that they eventually can come to other devices that can be deployed in Bend. And so they're really working with us to really in the 2 cents of the pilot, helping to shape the program, how it works with bikes compared to scooters for them, how it can be profitable. So, and I think so far they are, as far as the biking operations, they're happy, right? The more the better for them, no question. But they also want to use it because hopefully eventually they want to propose new devices to us, right? So I think in general they're happy. Sorry, long answer, I know. I just didn't know how to phrase it the right way in just like 5 words, right?
No, and one of the reasons I was asking was I was thinking about whether 35 cents or $1 was really enough of a motivation to get people to bring the bike to the right place, and yeah, their whole kind of cost and incentive model, maybe it just maybe in the grand scheme of the program, it doesn't matter to them if they don't charge enough to get people to bring bikes to the right place. So
yeah,
interesting
and
piece.
I know that Megan Perkins raised her hand, but just to jump on that. So Bird publicly gets a lot of pressure to create profit right now, right? So the entire micromobility industry that for the last couple of years was really just about technology and getting as many investments as they can, now is really turning that ship to say, we need to deliver revenue, right? So they're really looking at how can we operate, how can we do that? And I think that can be in our benefit as long as we're willing to work with them. I think the key in getting people to do the right thing and return the bike to a proper location is in having a good density of proper locations, right? Like if you're sending somebody, for example, I'm just using Newport Avenue as an example. If you're saying somebody, there's a lot of people going to Newport Avenue, doing the construction, doing everything, we have no preferred parking there. It's almost like it would be really mean for us to say, hey, we're gonna punish you because we wanted you to go back to like the commons to return your bike. It's defeating the purpose. So I think we need to be really willing to expand our biking infrastructure that can be used for preferred parking, so really doing a good thing for our community in general, right? And also helping people to return the bike where they can. And we can't do it fast enough, but we are committed to do it.
Thank you, Toby. Megan has her hand up, and I'll say we've got maybe 5 more minutes for this agenda item. We'll try and keep it to that. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, just a quick thing. Have there been any known crashes with the Bird bike since they've been in existence here in town? And I hear a lot about the lack of helmets, and was wondering sort of what the latest is, or if there are any thoughts about how to make that a little bit more safe in the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm not aware of any crashes. That I have not heard. I know that we had one bike being, like there were seven juveniles who were seen and caught to like throw one bike down the Columbia Bridge. One of them like completely destroyed, the other one ended up in the river. A little bit faster than I would have thought. But, that would be my kid. We would have had a really serious conversation about that. But besides that, I have not heard that. As for helmets, the bikes are all labeled to say, wear a helmet. Bird communicates, please wear a helmet. It's difficult with any kind of program to get people to really do it. And it's even more difficult, I usually don't say impossible, but it's very, very difficult to enforce it, right? Like how would we do that? And I think that's something that all these providers struggle with in general, and everybody who's involved with, how do we make that happen? And then it comes to that balance between, do we require it or not? Because we really want biking adoption, and that leads us down a rabbit hole. So I think that what it has done good for us, it has really gotten a lot of people in our community to be aware of e-bikes, although these are pedal assist e-bikes. And although the most teenagers that we are talking about when we said they're riding too wild or too crazy on e-bikes are not on Bird bikes, they're on their own e-bikes, and those are pretty much electric mopeds, right? And so I think what the Bird bikes have done for us is really focus our attention that maybe we need to talk about e-bike safety in general, and how do we make that happen?
Yes, agreed.
I've got a quick question. is there an area that these bikes cannot be ridden in? I mean, like the trails, you know, the mountain trails is there a limit as to where they can be?
So currently there are no limitations of where the bikes can be ridden. I know that Bend Parks and Rec, like before we launched the Bikeshare program, there was some conversations on their board, I think, about like what do they want to limit certain trails to access to e-bikes, but I don't think that has happened yet. I think that in my conversations with the parks staff, it was more, there's a conversation internally happening about should the speed limit, so should there be a speed limit for bikes on trails? And then that would be something that should apply to all bikes, right? For us, the advantages with the Bikeshare program, if the parks, not the bikes district, if the parks district would say, hey, we would like you to reduce the speed limit to 10 miles an hour, we could talk to Bird and say, in these areas, please let the bikes be limited to that speed, right? So there are pedal assist bikes. They are already limited to 50 miles an hour. They can't go faster. That's within, I know there's always law and reality, right? But it is within, it's important to note that that's within the guidelines from the state and within the law that is a class 1 pedal assist e-bike. Minimum age is 16, you're not required to wear a helmet, and you can go to, I think, 15 or 20 miles an hour. And so I think it is all within the guidelines and the permissible areas, but often they might be out of, I say this careful, out of touch with what's really needed on the street after behavior is observed.
So Toby, you can't ride these out to Phil's trails, right? It's like within the city, right?
Within, yeah, it's within city limits. So if you would be on a bike going out like whatever, Deschutes Market Road somewhere at the canal, it probably would stop once you hit the city limit border.
Thank you.
Great.
Toby, did you have another slide?
I only had one, but that was really just, I do this really quick. I'm not sure if you can see that. And that's really just to visualize all these light blue dots are where bikes are and where they dropped off, right? So you can really see that it's like, it's clustered around like our major destinations. And I know it's small, but here in downtown, then along Drake Park, Galveston, and then over here, you go over like 14th Street and Century, but then it comes back. And then you're like around the Box Factory, Old Mill district down here. But we do see them going all the way out too. And I think that's really exciting to see that. And I know there was something like in a former meeting where we discussed like access to other areas like East Side and stuff, that as we are building these partnerships and create more destinations on the East Side, I think we will see more people really going from like a park to a park, right, on a bike. And I think that will be great. And the only last thing I want to say is that one of the biggest concerns was with like our local business community that does a lot of work in the summer with visitors to rent them out bikes. And I think, so we're working on a messaging and new information on the City of Bend webpage and other messaging where we can say, hey, here are your mobility options when you come to the City of Bend, right? Here are your biking options. If you just want to have first mile, last mile, go from A to B for a short trip, take a Bird bike. If you want to have a high quality bike for all day long, take advantage of renting one from the local businesses. And I think will probably hopefully be beneficial and a win-win for all of us together. So.
Toby, could I ask you one last question? You mentioned that you are not getting, your inbox is not full and the emails you're getting are trending toward more positive. What about the police? Are you working with our police and finding out how often they're being called?
Yeah, so we are talking with police. There was a time where police got some more service requests calls on it and then forwarded them to the right email. I am in another meeting right now with the CSOs from the police. Just haven't joined it yet because we are still talking. So no, where we actually going over that. We are in frequent conversations though with them to find out like how many calls they're getting. And I think I think it really was high in the beginning, and then it dipped down. And I think really important to note is that now a lot of the conversations we get is that people think e-bikes are unsafe and it's a nuisance. And why are kids not riding regular bikes, or why this, and they go so fast. So I think it's really important to analyze that to say it's not all about the bike share program, right? And it's tough sometimes to do that. I understand, but I think all things considered, I feel it's safe to say we have like turned a little bit of a corner in the public feedback, and I hope it's not people that decided it's not worth it to say something. I want them to say something. I want them because this is a pilot program that we want to use to evaluate how do we run these programs in the future. And if it means we don't because they don't work out, we don't. And if we do, we want to do it right, right?
Thank you, Toby. That's exactly the message I've been giving people is we want to hear from you. We want to know what kind of crazy things people are doing that none of us could have ever imagined. And, you know, we're trying to build this program, but we don't want them to call 911.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Toby.
Sure.
This is,
Thank you.
for myself, this is all excellent news. Things are absolutely trending the way we wanted them to. And the idea of 80 new places in town to be able to park a bicycle is fantastic news. So thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
just have, yeah, of course, thank you. We just have one more quick, I'm going to say quick, sorry, Hovey, item from Hovey. Go ahead.
So the Metropolitan Transportation Program, improvement program is something called for monitoring federal funds. I just wanted to bring to your attention a correction to the administrative amendment for the Highway 20 Tumalo to Cooley Road project. I had gotten a few messages from people and I corrected it within 24 hours, I think, of posting it, saying that the roundabout at US 20 in Old Redmond, Bend Redmond Highway was not part of the project anymore. And I wanted to clarify that adding the $3.1 million to that project kept the roundabout in based on cost issues. So it was just one of those that I want you to be aware of, that if anybody here, you're here, that the roundabout has been taken out of that project. No, it has not. This is one of those clarifications. So that's been a process. The next slide just shows what is, maybe it's the hidden slide. Anyway, there's also an administrative amendment. There's also a full amendment that's going to go in August. So that's posted on our news, and we can show that one. What it is for curb ramps within the city of Bend and also sisters. So about 150 curb ramps for Bend and say 80 for sisters that are not part of other projects in the ODOT area that have a lot of ADA funds. That will be coming as a full amendment to policy board.
That's great. That's good news. All right, Tyler.
Just a quick, I don't know if David or Rick can answer this, but we're seeing, at all levels, huge cost increases in, right away and everything, it's raising costs. Do you know where the extra 3 million for this did come from? Cost savings from other projects or from reserve funds, something like that? Because I think we're at a point where we're gonna have to start potentially seeing projects being scaled back to address, the significant cost increases that we're seeing across the board right now.
I don't know the very fine grained specific sources. I can tell you it's 4 different pots of funding. 3 of those are region finance plan buckets. So those would probably be coming from savings of one sort or another from other projects, or swapping one color of funds on a project for another color that then goes into the finance plan. And then the 4th is from the additional fix-it funds that were allocated via the IIJA.
Oh, okay.
And that's, it looks like the bulk, about maybe 3/4 of it came from the finance plan buckets, and then about 700,000 from the IIJA increase.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That gets us to agenda item number 10, which is simply other business. Tyler, did you have anything for us?
No, not today.
Neither do I. Does anyone on the policy board have any All right, you can always reach out to myself or Tyler if you've got anything you would like to see on future agendas for the MPO. And that will get us to item number 11, which is an additional opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone who would like to make a comment to the MPO right now. Seeing none, I will say that our next policy board meeting is scheduled for the regular time, which is August 16th at noon. And this meeting will be available as a hybrid meeting. You can Zoom in or you can join us in person. I'll say at this moment, thank you to all of you for your patience trying to log in today. I know it was not easy, so thank you, and I'm sorry for those difficulties. And thank you to everyone. With that, I will say this meeting is adjourned, and enjoy this beautiful day. Get better, Phil. And thanks, everyone. We are adjourned.